Welcome. You are watching episode 78 of Regional Wrap, part two of a two-part interview pre-recorded on Saturday, the 21st of January, 2023. Regional Wrap providing insight on issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, part two of Far North Queensland, still stubbornly growing, is my guest economist, Bill Cummings. Welcome back, Bill.
I'll just talk about agriculture because I've termed agriculture as the northern development's Achilles heel. Now the thing about the tropical environment is that we've been able to get a lot of mining up, but for development in agriculture, we needed the technology that was suited, the plants, the animals, the farming systems, etc., that were suitable for a tropical climate. In the early part of the region's history, the North's history, the sheep came up to a line of about 20 degrees south, and that was their limit. But cattle were pushed into the far north, but the British breeds really weren't that suited, and the ticks came in from Asia into the Northern Territory in the 1890s. Tick fever, red water fever, spread right through the north and absolutely decimated the cattle herds. In fact, in one thing I read, they said it wasn't until the 1950s that the numbers got back to what they were beforehand. I haven't been able to verify that completely, but that just gives some idea of the scale of devastation of the cattle industry in the 1890s. Now, of course, it was very expensive to install all the cattle dips and so forth to deal with that problem. And it really hasn't been until from about the 1950s they started introducing Brahman stock from India, well, actually via Texas, actually, the Brahman blood, which is much more suited to a tropical climate, and with other improvements and so forth, and the opening out of the live cattle trade, the northern beef industry has grown to an extent where we've now, per square kilometre of land, we've got more cattle in the north now than in the south. And it's been one of the growth sectors of the economy, the expansion of beef production. However, to get the sugar industry to start with, of course, they introduced indentured labour from the Pacific Islands, but part of the agreement of the Federation was that was to go, and the sugar industry be protected. So the sugar industry grew up under protection, but the advent of development of cane harvesters during the 60s and the bulk sugar terminals saw us make a major leap in productivity in that sector that enabled us in the 1980s to throw up the need for that protection of the industry by banning imports. In fact, I can remember in Canberra in the 60s, Australia was complaining in world forums about having to compete with the cheap labour of a lot of other tropical countries. But then within my lifetime, I saw that swing right around, and a lot of the underdeveloped companies start talking or complaining about Australia's cheap mechanised sugar. And so that sugar industry has come through over the years to stand on its own 2 feet. Occasionally they've had terrible shocks with very low prices, but it survived. Now, however, so we had sugar and cattle mainly in the north, but more recently we've been able to develop a whole big horticultural sector in the economy. And going back in the 60s, a fellow, Bruce Davidson, a university professor from Western Australia, wrote a book called The Northern Myth. He was really attacking the ore scheme and spelling out how virtually anything that could be produced in the north could be produced cheaper in the south, in the subtropics and so forth. However, from the 60s, that's all turned around. And the big factor in it has been we've always been able to grow a lot of these tropical crops and even temperate zone crops for off-season markets more efficiently than Southern Australia. But the big factor has been the sealing of the roads, the cost that's allowed the cost of transport compared to other costs of production to fall dramatically, particularly with the development of semi-trailers and B-doubles and that sort of thing. And we've been able to develop the horticultural side. I can remember the northern New South Wales growers, the Mackay family, shifting up to Tully in the 1960s, and then the bananas, but up around Mareeba after the tobacco went. The Tinaroo water coming in to absolutely underpin a massive expansion of horticulture, and then with the sealing of the roads up to Cooktown, the Lakeland coming in, and so actually in the last intercensal periods from 2016 to 2021. Our gross value of agricultural production in the region has gone from about 1.7 billion to 2.1 billion. That's about 400 billion more in those 5 years or 6 years, and made a tremendous contribution to the regional economy. So it's taken a lot longer. It's been harder. But we have been winning through in terms of agricultural production, with this region leading the way. Of course, we're now seeing some movement to get cotton and grain in the more western areas of the region, and of course, I've been doing work recently on the Lakeland Dam project, and if it went ahead as planned or proposed, you'll put another town, probably around about the size of Ingham, up there in Cookshire. But of course, it requires a big investment to get it underway.
You're saying that the road system sort of help growth in that. Well, I think there's still a lot of improvement to go in regards to our road system. I mean, if you look at the rains in the last couple of weeks and the state of the Bruce Highway and the fact that it's again cut, it's still not an all-weather road. It's completely counter to the rhetoric that Brisbane and Canberra give in regards to developing North. I mean, that road is still a shambles to compare with what it should be. And then we still need more roadworks to come if we're going to develop further up the Cape.
Bill, I'll just tell you a little story. This goes back to the 1970s, at the time of the Whitlam government. There was a transport minister, I think Jones was his name, and he talked about he was coming up to Queensland to drive down the Bruce Highway to Brisbane. And before he came up, he was talking about double laning all the way to Brisbane. Now, this was in the 1970s. And anyway, he got back down to Brisbane, and they had a meeting down there with a whole lot of the local councils. And Roy Dixon, who was chairman of the Development Bureau at the time, chairman of Johnson Shire, was down there at that meeting And the Commonwealth Minister started going on about how crooked this Bruce Highway was, and all the narrow bridges, the narrowness of it, the bad edges, the whole lot, and Roy piped in and said to the minister, "Please, Mr. Minister, don't knock our Bruce Highway. It's the best road we've got." So, so
the Vertical Bridge
there's the need.
Gives me a bit of a fright.
There's been a major improvement in the Bruce Highway. However, what Roy was really saying, that we've got a whole massive additional roadwork roadwork improvement to be done. And I must say that in my view of the world for the region, the Coranda Range Road is absolutely, its efficiency is absolutely important to the economic efficiency of this region, particularly the development of the tablelands and the Gulf and the peninsula. Absolutely important that road is efficient and able to take the efficient freight vehicles of B doubles and so forth. The port is extremely important in the framework of the region, just as the airport's been very, very important in the development of tourism. In fact, was the key piece, the centerpiece that unlocked the tourism development, or helped unlock the tourism development in the region. And I've been delighted to see, I did some work going back years ago on the benefits of sealing the road through to Cooktown. And of course, we've seen that. We've got Cookshire has gone from, is more than doubled its value of agricultural production in recent years. And of course, Lakeland, there's the possibility of a major increase there. But I've been delighted to see the decision to seal the Peninsula Road, because all that area, I've been involved, and I didn't mention I spent a bit of time as chairman of the Edward River Crocodile Farm, which is located at the Pomperau community. The other directors on the board were two from the northern side of town, the Wickmonkin, and two from the southern side of town, the Taior. And those communities in the peninsula, economic basket case without a decent road leading into them. There's other factors there, of course, in those communities that hold them back, but the absolute essential, if you're going to get economic development in an area, is to have a decent transport system connection to it. So, Bill, as far as roads go, I've done work on the cost benefit on developing roads right across the north.
I think one of the things,
the Han Highway, the Burke Development Road, the road linking across the Gulf, the Outback Way from Boulia through Alice Springs to West Australia, the Tanami to give a direct link from the Kimberleys through to Alice Springs, and even Papua New Guinea, the proposed Trans-Island Highway to link Port Moresby and Lae. So roads figure very prominently in the developmental requirements of the region, of what was previously an underdeveloped region.
I think one of the things important is that if you invest dollars in places like central, north and far north Queensland, you're going to get a good return on your capital if you put the infrastructure in. If you build the roads and build the dams, you'll get a great return. But it doesn't seem to be in the mindset of Canberra or Brisbane to do that. It's like, it's if we have to prove the case 100 times over that it's going to be viable before they even think about giving us $1. Do you think that's the wrong mindset?
Yeah, Bill, one of the problems is, and I recognise this from the time I first came back north and really sort of got involved, is that in economics and in consideration of economic investments and development, etc., you've got to recognise that different economies are in different stages of development, and the North has been in quite a different stage of development to Southern Australia because of that lag, because of the tropical technology business getting over those problems, and mind you, in the North's history, there have been some failures, and of course that's been played up. You know, the Ord, for instance, is a magnificent dam site. The engineers couldn't keep their hands off it, but it really hasn't fired. But it's partly because of its location and that technology factor. Whereas you know, dams in Queensland have been quite successful. But you know, and there have been failures in the past, and that's coloured the view of the North for a lot of people. However, what they don't recognise is that you've got to tailor your economic evaluation, your strategies, and so forth to the realities of that economy. And what's important in Southern Australia and preoccupies Southern Australia is not necessarily a thing that should be preoccupying the North. And however, just to give you an example of how it works through, with the evaluation of roads in a cost benefit, normally you look at the volume of traffic on that road. You look at if you improve that road, what the savings will be in travel time, what the savings will be in vehicle operating cost, what the savings will be in safety. Now, if you've got a road that's got a big volume of traffic on it and you make a marginal improvement, you can get, because of the volume of traffic, you can get very, very positive figures coming out. You've got a road that's currently got a low volume of traffic on it, but its upgrading will result in a major increase in traffic on the road, but it will also result in a major increase in economic activity in the region. There's a developmental factor that is not present when you're looking at capital city roads, where everything is already connected. But if you bitumise a road from Cairns, from the Tablelands to Cooktown, you absolutely transform the economic status of that area. However, the normal way things are evaluated doesn't really have a look at that economic development factor to the same degree that it looks at that what's called an economic efficiency factor. And I've seen it also, I've been doing a bit of work in relation to Lakeland. And there you've got a situation where the normal way to evaluate a dam would be the price the water can be sold at to farmers and the take up by the farming. Now, with a dam, you're building a 100-year plus piece of infrastructure that virtually permanently changes the landscape to provide a big lake, and of course, if you apply discount factors into the future, you can you're only taking into account things in the very short term. However, what's not recognised is the amount of economic development that would be switched on in an area like that, by the dam. And as I say, you're looking at creating another town about the size of Ingham. But in your conventional way of assessing it, that doesn't come through strongly. Anyway, that's part of the problem. Is the mindset with the way things are evaluated at state and federal level, that there's not now. Also, for instance, with agriculture, there's not been a recognition of that technological factor, that if you get farming going in an area, crop yields and so forth that might apply now won't necessarily apply in the future because they'll improve, and that all needs to be taken into account also. But it's a constant battle. Been involved with it all, for many years, Bill.
But here's the rub, right? From, say, all the Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund area that's recognised as Northern Australia, we've got 80% of the mainland's water. We've got more than 50, nearly 60% of the export wealth. Don't you think it's a bit disingenuous to apply their mathematical formulas for a road in Brisbane or a tunnel in Brisbane, which, like the Cross River Rail Tunnel, it's going to cost, it started off at 5 billion, it's now 7, it's going to end up at 12. It's never going to generate a dollar. It's a liability forever. Well, taxpayers will have to keep subsidising every trip that goes through, every patron that goes through there will have to maintain it at high cost, and the state and the people will not earn a dollar out of that. Yet if you did something in Central and North Queensland, like build a dam, build a better road, it's going to generate wealth. And I think it's very disingenuous to be locked under the same formula as they're using in Brisbane and Canberra.
Yes, well, of course, that's at times what's very important is to get people out of that mindset. That applies to their local environment. It was just like the growth centre theory. Actually, it didn't work in the south. Even they concentrated on Albury Wodonga, of trying to build it up artificially, but it didn't succeed. Cairns has outgrown Albury Wodonga by a mile, and at the time when they were selecting growth centres around Australia, Cairns wasn't even considered. Townsville and Rockhampton were, but Cairns wasn't even considered. And yet it's the city that's grown the fastest. Anyway, Bill, well, yeah, that's right. It's what's important is to get through that what applies in Southern Australia doesn't necessarily apply in the north. You've got to apply some new thinking to it, and recognise the different factors at work.
Do you think they're capable of coming up with new thinking, or do you think it's more of a matter that the million people in Central and North Queensland just need to give them the chop and create a new state and make up our own decisions?
Well, yes, Bill, of course, that's been around for a long time, and I believe we're quite capable of making our own decisions. Our own decisions in the north, and there would be a lot better decision making. And of course, it's what's actually in area. These major regions are state-sized, and however, they're too weak. They've been too weak to support a state structure. So the only way that we've been able to even look at a viable a new state is to cobble together a number of these regions, and of course that's not easy. To bring the regions together, there have been North Queensland-wide organisations like the North Queensland Local Government Association, but there's never really been a very strong move to bring the regions together in a common cause and set up a state in the north. Of course, the Northern Territory has got a degree of statehood, but when you go to Western Australia, it's very, very much, the northwest is very much tied back to Perth.
I think one of the problems is if the bit of the old mindset in what is North Queensland. I mean, I'm a West Australian, and I've never viewed that North Queensland should try to push to being a state. I mean, I just look at the prospect of a Northern Queensland state, and to make it viable, you basically need 1 million people. So that's Central and North Queensland tied together. That's where you get 1 million people. That's where you'll get the equivalent of 5 federal electorate seats and more or less guaranteed getting 12 senators. But I think we've had the past history where we've had what used to be the Southern Division, Central Division, and Northern Division as 3 separate areas. And, if you go back into the colonial days, North Queensland, Central Queensland were viable as separate colonies, just on the basis of their economics in those days. But the thing is, now things have changed. The state has to actually deliver a lot more services than they did in those days. So you do need, for that viability, you do need a basic core population, and that core population should be about 1 million people, according to Bernard Salt, the demographer. So I think we've got to look at it at that everything that is identified in the Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund for Queensland goes, which is basically Gladstone up, should be the basis of a state, and then you've got financial viability for a separate state. But that's like you say, it needs to get that message across to all the different regions that have got to work together to affect that.
Yes, Bill. Actually, just going back over time, of course, up until about 1990, we had a political situation in the state, or going right back. Of course, there were moves in the very early part of the development of Queensland for new states in the north, and but because the north didn't advance that well, and there was a big problem in the 1920s when the mining in the region tended to collapse, and Queensland developed a political system where, particularly from the when was it, the 1950s, when there was a change from I think there was
1949.
The Labor Party split, and the Country Party Liberal coalition came in, but the leaders in that coalition at the time was the Country Party, and subsequently called the National Party. And during that period, of course, there was a very strong emphasis on development of the north and central part of the state, particularly in the mining, in tourism, but also, the building of the Burdekin Dam and the Fairbairn Dam and so forth. The Tinaroo Dam goes back a bit further than that. And the area, was going ahead very strongly. However, that situation has changed politically, and so you don't have such a strong voice in the state parliament and in the government from the north. So we're in a bit of a different situation at present, and what you're suggesting is that a new state, would be the answer to getting policies and funding priorities and so forth into the area that were much more favourable to the area. Now we now do have a population of 1 million from the central Queensland region north. I go back to a time when to get the population of that area equal to Tasmania, you had to go right down to central Queensland, and now just the Cairns and Townsville regions exceed Tasmania in population by a significant margin. So the basic requirements are there. To me, it's a matter of those 4 very distinct regions coming together in being able to set up the institutional arrangements that satisfy the 4 regions to push ahead. There's no doubt that the economic strength of the area is such that a state structure could be supported in terms of the amount of agriculture, the terms of amount of mining, revenue, tourism, and so forth. So the economic conditions are probably there. The key thing is to bring together those regions that are probably used to rivalry in presenting their case to Brisbane for attention, and them coming together in common cause. When
we went back to the one value system in '89 after the Fitzgerald Quarry got rid of the malapportionment system of voting, we're seeing Central and North Queensland. We now got 19 seats of 93. This year is we're due to have a boundary review, electoral review, followed by the actual implementation of the redistribution before the next election. Basically, since the last redistribution, we've had about 374,000 new voters come onto the roll in Queensland in 5 years. So, and unfortunately, the regions haven't kept up with that good average sort of thing. We're sort of falling behind. So that this review coming up at the end of this year and the redistribution next year, we'll probably see at least one Central and North Queensland seat go, and at least one seat in Southeast Queensland increase, and that's what we're faced for the future forever if we don't do something in regards to becoming a separate state. Our political influence will continue to decrease, and if you look at New South Wales, I mean, the population of Queensland is now 5.5 million. New South Wales is about, as we head on to that trajectory, we'll probably only have about 10 seats in Central and North Queensland by the time we get to a population of 8 million people in Queensland. And that's not a good future, I don't think.
Yes, Bill, I fundamentally agree with you that Queensland, of course, has got this large northern annex from central Queensland north Actually, if you go south of central Queensland, in Queensland, the economic and political structures and so forth are very similar to New South Wales and Victoria. And however, you've got this large tropical annex that has required special different policies to develop, and I agree with you that we've got a problem at this stage. Can I say at an economic level, it's a matter of concern to me that in the last intercensual period, our population growth is the lowest we've had for decades. There was a lull in population growth between, 96 to 81, with the Asian crisis and all that sort of thing. At that time, there was a bit of a lull, but the growth over the last intercensual period has been way below the average over the last 40, 50 years. And, there's factors in there, a little bit of factor of COVID at the end, but and the mining investment boom finishing, so there's been those factors, some factors in there. However, it's a concern to me that it's got so low compared to what we were achieving.
Well, we've been going for more than an hour,
that's
so
fitting into your
we need to sort of wind up. Just before we sort of wind up, can you give us a bit of your feel on what Cairns and Far North Queensland needs as infrastructure to put it on the road to wealth creation for the next generation?
Well, number one in my book is to get the Kuranda Range Road, or the range crossing, the link between Cairns and its hinterland, its internal hinterland, north and west, up to an efficient standard for transport. That's number one in my book.
That's heavy transport in particular.
Heavy transports, yeah. It's the problem with the Kuranda Range Road. Yes, there's congestion and so forth, and part of the problem is as soon as you talk about heavy transports on it, everybody throws their hand up in horror. But the realities for the economy is that we need an efficient heavy transport road. We no longer have an efficient railway. Places like Rockhampton and Townsville have got efficient railways going to the west. Brisbane has an efficient railway. We do not. That Kuranda Range Road is absolutely critical to the future long-term development of this region. Yeah, quite apart from that, of course, as far as roads go, we need to continue the work of getting bitumen into the peninsula and through to the tip. To me, the port needs to be deepened. We need to look forward, given our horticultural production capacity in the region, to the port handling container ships for export. We need to look forward to that, not run away from it, not say, oh, you can ship it through Townsville, you can ship it through Brisbane or Sydney. We need to put that on our radar. The railway line from, in the transport field, the railway line from Townsville to Cairns is inefficient. It needs basic improvement. I'd like to think of a time in the future when we've got a fast rail between Cairns and Townsville. Basically, the core of Northern Australian economy is the Cairns and Townsville regions. That's the core of it, and a fast rail linkage would fit into that pattern well into the future. However, The other thing, of course, is the regional roads, that regional road structure, particularly the Peninsula Road, but also we're very close now to getting the hand sealed. That shows we've got a direct inland route, sealed route all the way to Melbourne and Adelaide, and we also, however, need to pay attention to the Gulf Road linking this region through to the Northern Territory and Darwin. At present, to stay on the bitumen, you've got to go, 200, 300 kilometres south. And then when you get over the Northern Territory, you've got to go another 200, 300 kilometres north again. Saves about 400 kilometres in distance, linking across the north. Anyway, that's the other big thing in my mind, Bill, is at the university level. Even though we've got university campuses here, they are still relatively underdeveloped. The statistics of the number of people employed in university education in Cairns compared to the population is about half that of all the other cities our size in Australia, including Townsville and Toowoomba and Hobart, Launceston, you name it. We're running at about half. That the university sector in this region is still underdeveloped. Mind you, they've all taken a knock because of COVID. However, in coming out of it, we need to be sure that we pay attention to that sector.
What about water?
Sorry, Bill. Yeah, well,
I just think of Cairns focusing on tourism and that. Tourists as holiday makers, and especially I as a holiday maker, when I go somewhere, I don't care how long I stay in the shower, how much water I use. I just want plenty of it when I want it. If we're going to make Cairns grow, say from its 150 odd thousand people in the sort of immediate area to a city of 300 or 400,000, we have to do a lot more thinking about our water. I mean, it's not the Mulgrave solution, and Mulgrave is not going to be sustainable for double the Cairns growth. And the same thing for the rest of our agriculture and things. There have to be a lot more focus on water infrastructure.
Yeah, Bill, of course, we've got a situation there with drawing out of the Mulgrave where we're right for the immediate or a couple of decades at least. However, what concerns me is that on the agricultural front, we've had tremendous benefits from the water from Tinaroo, but the water from Tinaroo is now fully allocated. And if we're going to continue expanding, we need more water storages. And I've been critical of the assessment that was made of Nalinga Dam. I don't believe that technically, I addressed this question earlier. I don't believe that it was technically competent. I think it was. It really should have been looked at in greater detail from a technical point of view. However, there are other water storage possibilities, one of which is Lakeland, and we badly need additional, now that Tinaroo is taken up, we badly need additional storage for the continuing development of agriculture in the region. I've been concerned that there's been a negative attitude towards the catchments in the Gulf area, the Etheridge, the Ainslie, the Gilbert, of developing the water resources there. With water, I did an exercise in relation to Strathmore Station, and with water, there's a potential there with cotton and sorghum and beef fattening and that sort of thing, to have a value of agricultural production up around the 300 million, which is once again getting towards the size of of what Lakeland would produce. That would be just through harnessing the river, not building big dams, just some water storages. But the people proposing to do this are getting blocks put in their way. So yeah, it is a major issue in this region if we're going to continue expanding our agriculture.
I think one of the big problems is, like you say, is what they want as a return for the price of the water to get the capital back. But that should never be a government's role. That the fact that they'll only build something on the basis that they get a return in 30 years that covers the capital cost. I mean, that's a ridiculous role for government's play. That government's supposed to be for development, wealth creation, and the well-being of the nation, not bean counters like the way they're going.
Yeah, Bill, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's this fundamental problem about the view of the North and its development, that there's been little faith that this technological factor standing behind it, which a lot of people have not recognised, will be overcome, or has been in many fields overcome, is being overcome, and that the North will progress. And that's the basic problem of the mindset of looking too short term with it. Can I just say that, and we haven't mentioned tourism at this stage, and the airport, of course, is terribly, terribly important to us. That initial investment in the airport of about $35 million only switched on a massive billions of dollars worth of economic activity, and investment in the region. It succeeded beyond our dreams at the time, and it's sort of typical of that it was quite difficult at the time to get that initial investment recognised, and nobody dreamed, as I say at the time, that it would be so successful. But their stories, Tinaroo was built in the 1950s, and it took time before the conditions became right for it to really blossom. It was built originally for the tobacco industry, and with the collapse of the tobacco industry, which was really due to a withdrawal of protection, but underlying that was the industry couldn't be mechanized. There was problems in getting the labor costs down with it. But there was the farmers in that area performed magnificently, and then with that transport corridor, or the transport conditions to the south improving, the whole thing has just all come together into a major new horticultural area in Australia. But at the time, it was difficult to predict all that history, that tobacco would finally fade with the Australia withdrawing from protection, and that horticultural industry would develop the way it has.
I think the innovation that people of the North have. I mean, I look at Sean Jackson up at Lakelands and his seedless watermelon and his broccolini, and then his orange glow pumpkin, and the methods that they do. You know, they don't actually, they grow a lot of things in raised soil or boxes and that. So there's plenty of innovative ways to make advances. So I don't know where this lack of belief comes from, and I can't help thinking sometimes the lack of the belief of the people in the South who are controlling the pockets is sometimes created by the fact that we don't know. I don't know if we really have a lot of people, leaders in the North and Central Queensland, to have belief in themselves that they can do it and advance. They seem to remain tied to the belief that we need Canberra and Brisbane to do things for us. Hopefully we can grow out of that mindset.
Yeah, Bill, that's a lot of problem. There is a problem with the view of the North in Southern Australia. It is important to counter that. It's important to get the message over that what is applied in the past in the North is not necessarily a guide to the future. In the past 50 years, we've come ahead magnificently. It concerns me at present that we're not progressing as rapidly as we have in the past. So, you know, the runs are there, but there's still a lot of old attitudes in Southern Australia that have a jaundiced view of the North, and some of the old failures uppermost in their mind.
I suppose one thing we could do is we could go and pinch the Wagner brothers from Toowoomba and bring them up here, and maybe they could drive things, because what they've done for Toowoomba and that region is nothing short of phenomenal. To build a private airport, push the government relentlessly to get the Toowoomba connector and the bypass road in, so that Toowoomba's, you know, really gone ahead. Maybe we need to invent another set of Wagner brothers for the northern Queensland.
Yes, Bill, you've raised a very important point, that there's a limit to what governments can do and or are prepared to do, and the basic, the very basis of advances in the region. Okay, infrastructure has been important, but there's been a whole lot of people who've been willing to invest in the development of tourism. There's our farmers have been great innovators. Our graziers have been great innovators, and have been prepared to invest in, and it's that business structure in the region that fundamentally drives the economy and its progress. The government infrastructure is very important in enabling that, and what's important is to get a message over that government needs to come with us. It needs to come with the northern community in the provision of adequate infrastructure and services from a government's point of view. But the fundamental driver, of course, is all those businesses that are putting their own money on the line and progressing the region. For instance, the Chapmans built the cableway. There's people have invested in the Hartley's Creek crocodile farm. There's investors have led the way in the cattle industry and in bringing in Brahman stock and that sort of thing. So it was local inventors who developed the cane harvesters. It wasn't the government. It wasn't big business that developed the cane harvesters. The first successful one was developed at Ingham by Lawrence Mizzy, tinkering around with making alterations here, alterations there. It was really brought about by the little local engineering works, tinkering around with models. Eventually, the big companies picked up those models and produced them commercially. However, a lot of the advance has been due to the inventiveness and entrepreneurship of local people. We're seeing it happen with cotton at present. People venturing into that field and starting to develop systems and varieties and so forth that suit this area.
Well, I think we've got the people with the innovation and desire. I think sometimes it's a little bit, the roadblocks are there in regards to
Well, that's right, Bill.
the government's hurdles that they put in the way.
Bill, and obviously in this region, the environment is important because of tourism. However, you can't take it too far. Actually, I look at those rainforests, and of course, I've been around the north for a long time, and my family has, and they're not fragile. They soon regrow. I can recall when the Rex Highway there from Mossman up to Mount Malloy was developed, that some were complaining that you can see the scar in the landscape from the moon. But you go there today, you'd hardly notice it. The Coranda Rail, if you look at the old photos, a modern generation would be absolutely horrified by the piles of rock and rubble stretching down the hillsides at the time it was built. But today, you just don't notice it. It's not there. It's grown over, and it is a concern of mine that a lot of this environmental constraints and so forth is going too far, particularly in a region like this that is just getting to a point with agriculture, for instance, where a lot of it is viable. A lot of New South Wales, Victoria, Southern Queensland was cleared 100 years ago. The clearing that went on 100 years ago, everybody throw their hands up in horror. But of course, that's what they're doing in relation to the north.
Well, I don't think most people are amazed. You can go down to Tasmania and stand in these wonderful forests, but 30 years before they'd been completely clear felled, And the same thing up here. People just don't get it, that things regrow and animals come back, and it's not like we're creating a moonscape. And so I think the emotional side, they use it too much against development.
Yeah,
Basically, on that note, we'd just like to wind it up there.
Yes,
Would you
certainly,
like
Bill.
to
We've had a
finish
good
off
session.
any? If you just want to finish off with any poignant notes in regards to encouraging the people of Cairns and far north Queensland to keep getting on with what their business is and growing their economy.
That's right. And Bill, I gave an address there recently when I went back over the growth that had been taking place in the region, in Cairns, in the region, and I said my final message is keep it rolling. Okay, keep it rolling, because this area is still relatively underdeveloped, and there are still penalties for people living in this area from that relative lack of population and development.
Well, I suppose the one thing surely most people want to see is development, so that they don't have to lose their children to the south or somewhere else to get a decent job and have a brilliant future. And I think that has to be a goal for central north and far north Queensland, that not only does it keep its normal population that grows itself, and it also encourages new people to come along in the future.
Yeah, most definitely, Bill. Yeah.
Okay, Bill, look, thanks very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Good, Bill. Pleasure.
Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page. Or also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please join me again next week for another episode of Regional Wrap. Thank you.